and welcome to Babbling by the Brook. I'm Mark Hoebee, Paper Mill's producing artistic director. You know, of course, we can't wait to produce live theater for our audiences again. But on the bright side, I'm delighted that this unique and challenging year has allowed Paper Mill the opportunity to explore some terrific shows we normally wouldn't be able to produce, such as our upcoming production of PETE N KEELY this spring. Today, I'm excited to give you a preview with director and lyricist Mark Waldrop, whose resume spans Broadway, off-Broadway, the Radio City Christmas Spectacular, Bette Midler concerts, and of course, Paper Mill. Please welcome Mark Waldrop to the show. Mark, how are you? It's great to see you.
Thank you. It's great to see you, Mark. It's been a long time.
I know, in person, it's been a long time.
Yes.
So funny. I mean, you have been a member of the Paper Mill family for a long time.
Yes, very long
And you
time.
are literally a member of the Paper Mill family because you are married to my right-hand man here, Patrick Parker.
Yes, I am.
And it's so funny. He refers to us as his marks. I am the day mark and you are the night mark. So.
I know that. He loves to tell that story. He tells it all to everybody.
I love it too, though. It's so sweet. He's a wonderful man, and so are you.
Thank you.
But I want to talk a little bit about your accomplishments before we get into some other subjects, because you wear many, many hats.
I do.
You're the winner of the Edward Kleban Award for Lyrics. You wrote lyrics for the acclaimed 75th anniversary edition of the Radio City Music Hall, which you also wrote the script for.
Mm-hmm.
You wrote book and lyrics for Howard Crabtree's When Pigs Fly, one of my favorites. And
Which I also directed.
Yes, and also Whoop-de-Doo.
I contributed material to Whoop-de-Doo. I had a number of contributors. and a lot of people think I directed Whoop-de-Doo, but I did not direct Whoop-de-Doo.
Well, I think they just assumed since you did Pigs Fly, that was the
I know they do assume that, but Philip George directed Whoop-de-Doo, and I will give him his due because he's a talented guy.
Very good. PETE N KEELY, of course, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. Many other things you did. You worked with Bea Arthur on her Broadway show.
I did. I directed her Broadway show and helped her rewrite it on the road.
And that was had a Tony nomination for.
It did for best a special event,
unique
theatrical event. That was
right.
it.
And then, of course, I remember seeing Bette Midler's Divine Miss Millennium tour.
Yes.
I've seen her several times in Vegas,
yes.
In New York. I can't keep it straight. She's an incredible actress.
Was she a mermaid in a wheelchair in the one you saw?
She was.
That's a trick question. She's always a mermaid in a wheelchair in every show.
But I knew one of her mer women in it. The Harlettes, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Rayanne Therio was one of the Harlettes.
Oh, one of my favorite lines of all time. It's the Harlettes. They're my backup girls because I have to keep telling them, back up, girls.
Oh, that must have been incredible working with her. What a talent.
It was one of the great experiences of my life.
And a force of nature and just, you know, one of those women that I can't ever imagine giving less than 150% all the time.
She did. When she was on stage, sometimes she, you know, you'd watch her walking toward the stage and she'd be like, oh, I can't do it. And then she'd enter and she'd be, you know, firing on all cylinders and sparkling and fabulous, always.
And she's done it all too. Concerts, albums, Broadway, film, she's one of the best. I just love her.
She is. And she's a throwback.
Yeah.
She's stayed relevant. She has figured out how to stay relevant. I mean, she's still working and still doing great stuff. But she was, you know, in her heyday, in her early years, her first bursting on the scene, she was like a throwback to vaudeville. I mean, her act was different than everybody else's act.
She's a little Fanny Bryce-ish. Is that a word?
Yeah.
Right? Comedian, singer, actress, but all those things. Like you're right. She's a vaudevillian. She's like a modern.
And she knows all that stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes she doesn't want you to know that she knows it.
Yeah.
But she's a connoisseur of like showbiz through the ages. She knows all of it.
what was it like being in the studio with her working on that show? I mean,
Well, it was an arena show.
Right.
So we rehearsed in Los Angeles in an airplane hangar.
Was there an airplane in there with you?
There was no airplane in it at the time, but that was where they could set up her stage, which was a portable stage. It was designed to be broken down and transported overnight and set up in a new arena somewhere else. And so that's the kind of space we needed to rehearse in.
And she seems to be, to me, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, that she seems so off the cuff and in the moment, but I imagine she is one of those people that is rehearsed like within an inch of her life all the time.
Well, she's impeccably rehearsed, and that is why she can go off the cuff or be in the moment, because she always knows exactly where she is. Yeah. She won't get lost.
Yeah.
But she can ad lib. She can react to something that's happening, you know.
With the best of them. I remember seeing that, her and Dolly, and you know, I have never seen Carol Channing in the show.
I did it with Carol Channing.
I know, we're going to get to that.
Yeah, so believe me, I know Carol Channing's Dolly.
Yeah, but she was, I thought after I saw that, wow, I don't think I ever need to see the show again, because she brought everything to the table and was heartbreaking and funny and sang and just hilarious and chewed the scenery like nobody.
Yeah, as one needs to do in that part. Yeah, she made it her own. She reinvented it for herself.
So let's talk about that, because more shows that you've written, and we have a great relationship with TheaterWorks, and you've written Christmas Carol for them and Gold Rush and Bunnicula and all of that. And then for us, we'll get to this too. Here at Paper Mill, you directed Gypsy with Betty Buckley. Romeo and Burnett, I loved that show. Little Shop of Horrors. Funny thing happened on the way to the Forum, but you started as an actor.
I did.
And performed on Broadway in original companies of La Cage,
Evita,
the Grand Tour with Joel Grey.
The Grand Tour, and then my first Broadway show was a revival of Hello, Dolly with Carol Channing.
Yeah, we won't say the year.
It was a long time ago. I was very, very young.
One of her many tours. She came back a lot. But so you were very successful as an actor. How did you make the transition to writer, lyricist, and then director? How did all that occur?
I had the good fortune to do Evita for 4 years on Broadway. Wow. And I went right from that to La Cage, which I did for 4.5 years.
Wow.
So clearly,
your stint on Broadway, I mean, nobody does that.
I was very, very lucky, and to be in back-to-back best Tony-winning musicals, Yeah. And clearly, I wasn't so driven that I was like, I'm going to get out of the chorus and star in a show. I was just happy to like walk in that stage door 8 times a week and be in a Broadway show. I loved it. And those companies were like families to me, and they still are. I'm still in touch with many, many people from both of those shows, including really a couple of my very best friends. But I am a creative person, and so clearly we all needed outlets for our creativity, as we did the same show 8 times a week for 4 years.
Right.
So I started helping people put together acts. This was a big period when everyone did their act at Don't Tell Mama, or we started out, my first show, actually the first one I directed was with Terry Klausner up at the grand finale.
Oh, I don't even know.
Remember the grand finale?
No.
It was a big deal.
Where was it?
It was on 71st Street.
Oh yeah.
And like Cheetah Rivera played there right before her, and I mean it was a very legit room. It was a good booking.
Yeah.
And Terry's show was very successful. It got a rave review in the Times, and so that gave me a lot of cred. So then a lot of other people started asking me to help them with their shows, And I would help them put the show together and select the material and direct them on their performance. But then also the shows, I would help them with what they were saying between the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And the shows became sort of more sophisticated and more complex and more written and more conceptual, and not just somebody's singing 12 songs.
I think people don't realize that too. You go to see a cabaret or, you know, someone's act, and when it's really good, it's because so much thought has gone into the structure, the theme, the storytelling, right? Like you're saying, it's not just I'm going to sit down with my audition book and flip through the pages and sing a few songs.
Well, a lot of people try to do an act that way. And that's why a lot of people loathe cabaret acts, because they really haven't seen good ones.
Right.
Because it's a great art form when it's done well.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's so intimate. It's really not like anything else.
Yeah.
So that's how I started to write. And I was, by the time I was in La Cage, I had directed several shows for people in that cast. And the producers of La Cage came to see those shows. And so they said, this guy can do some stuff. He can write. He's a good writer. So at the Palace Theater during the run of La Cage, they did George Abbott's 100th birthday at the Palace Theater. And it was an all-star, I mean, huge stars, and 70 of them appeared in this show. And the producers of La Cage hired me to write special material for it.
Wow.
And that was my first writing credit. So I had some lyrics in the show. I wrote some lyrics for Chita Rivera in the show.
Wow.
And I performed in the show too, with a little quintet of people from La Cage doing some of this material.
So not a bad start at the Palace Theater on Broadway, right?
It was very heady. Those were heady times.
They always say people dream of playing the Palace. Like, you know, you've made it when you played the Palace. So you started out as your first big writing credit was like at the Palace Theater.
It was.
That's amazing. And then how did you move into, you know, what was your next big writing project?
Well, my big leap was at La Cage. I met Howard Crabtree, who was, he was working in the wardrobe department. And Howard was a performer, but he was also a brilliant costumer. And one of the swings in the show named Drew Geraci, who was a very talented guy, they wanted to do a nightclub act. And they did a show at Don't Tell Mamas that they got me to help them direct and write it. And it was called Howard and Drew Meet the Invisible Man. And it was it was one of the greatest cabaret shows ever, I am sure. It was like a party, that show. And Drew had come up with this character that was the Invisible Man's mother. And it was sort of just like a woman in a sort of Chanel suit with a little wig and a little hat, but all wrapped in bandages. So they jumped off from that, and Howard played the Invisible Man and Drew played the Invisible Man's mother. And this was a sketch that was sort of serialized through the act. They also appeared as themselves. But this was told in like maybe 5 segments during the show. And the story was that the Invisible Man had discovered that he wasn't invisible. Like if he unwrapped his hand, he could see his finger. And that his mother was horrified by this and was like, don't tell anybody. So it was a coming out analogy.
I get it, yeah.
And it was very funny. It was told very well. Through that process, Howard and I just kind of like, his talent as a humorist, a visual humorist, it just released something in me creatively. And it was such a joy to collaborate with him. And at the same time, I think he saw in me someone who could like give his crazy things he made a context in which to exist. So we decided we were going to write an off-Broadway show together, and we wrote a show. It was called Whatnot. It was our first off-Broadway show. It won the Richard Rodgers Production Award, which was a nice cash prize that helped us get it on. And it opened at the York Theater. Might not have been called the York at that point, but it was that theater. It had John Tracy Egan in it, and Jennifer Smith, and a wonderful guy named Mark Lazor, and Howard. It's cast of 4. And it got like the worst reviews. You could have peeled paint with those reviews. They were horrible. But I will say that the seeds of a lot of wonderful things were in that show. And I was quite discouraged by that, but Howard, bless him, was not. He was like, fine, okay, we did that, moving on, let's move on. Let's do the next thing. And he booked us into the duplex. We had a date before we had a show. And he said, okay, we're booked in the duplex and we're gonna do a show and it's gonna be called When Pigs Fly. Now this was not the When Pigs Fly that eventually we opened off Broadway, but the first version of When Pigs Fly. And it was good and it worked. And I performed in that one. That's the only time I performed with Howard. But it happened and it was good and it was encouraging, but I was ready to get out of Dodge. I was kind of burnt out. So I got booked on the QE2 as a singer. So I went away for 4 months. And during that 4 months, these other guys, including Phil George, approached Howard and said, we saw When Pigs Fly, we loved it. We want to do a show with you. We'll put some of the stuff from that When Pigs Fly into Whoop-De-Doo. That became Whoop-De-Doo. I did write some material for Whoop-De-Doo that on request, actually before I left town. But when the show opened, when Whoop-De-Doo opened, I was on the high seas. I had no idea what was going on. And I was talking to some people on the ship one day, some guests, and they were telling me they had seen this hilarious show called Whoop-De-Doo. And I was like, what? Tell me all about it. They were like, well, there was this and this. And I said, I wrote that.
In the middle of the Atlantic Ocean.
It was crazy. It was ridiculous.
Oh my God. So I'm sure you have a million stories.
I have so many damn stories.
I know. And but I want to get to, before we forget, PETE N KEELY. So take us into that project because that's so special.
Well, I'm going to jump over When Pigs Fly just to say When Pigs Fly came out of Whoop-De-Doo. This time it was just Howard and me. Howard says, okay, we learned a lot from Whoop-De-Doo. Now we're just going to do a show called When Pigs Fly, just you and me. Yeah. We're the ones doing it. And we did, and it went so well, and it won, well, there's more of a story there, but anyway.
It was at the Fairbanks, was that?
It was at the Fairbanks, it ran for 2 years.
Yeah, I remember it was like a staple for a long time.
And people went back and back and back, and everybody came to see it. And out of When Pigs Fly, my entire career came. Yeah. Because you hired me, you hired me for Gypsy, or no, Gypsy was before you. It
was before me, yeah.
Paper Mill hired me. Yeah. Paper Mill hired me for Gypsy because of When Pigs Fly. Bette Midler hired me to direct her act because of When Pigs Fly.
Wow.
But my friend Jim Heinman came to me, and I was like, my stock was very high at that moment. And he was like, I have this idea for a show. Will you help me? Do you want to direct it? Will you help me put it together? And he wanted to do a show about a pair of singers who sort of based on Steve and Edie. Yeah. Although unlike Steve and Edie, this pair is now divorced and they are reunited out of sort of desperation for a live television special. And he got this idea because he actually had an album of Steve Lawrence and Edie Gourmet's that had come as a bonus, as a add-on when you bought some brand of shampoo. Yeah. And that was his concept, was that this shampoo company is sponsoring getting these two people back together to, you know, tell the story of their careers, and that behind the scenes, there's this, you know, fraught emotional thing about they are, you know, they had all these problems that made them get divorced, but they deep down really do love each other. And now they're put in this, you know, in front of television cameras, in front of America. And all of their stuff has to get worked out sort of like just under the surface until it bubbles to the surface. And it all takes place, you know, within the course of this TV special.
Right. And it's set in 1968-ish?
1968.
Right.
And, you know, that was the golden age of TV variety shows. And,
absolutely. It's like,
and I grew up watching them. I loved them.
Like Cavalcade of Stars and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, right? I mean, you know, this was maybe a little after the Ed Sullivan Show, but the Carol Burnett Show, right. Sonny and Cher, speaking of famous singing couples who got divorced.
Right.
And, you know, there are lots of other ones who did too. Robert Goulet and Carol Lawrence.
Right.
Famous singing couple who got divorced. Gordon and Sheila McCrae. Famous couple of singers who got divorced. And in fact, after PETE N KEELY happened, I learned that there was a TV special where Gordon and Sheila McCrae were reunited after they were divorced.
Did you ever watch it?
No, I've never seen it.
I was just wondering if that would be interesting to see after working on PETE N KEELY and writing the backstory, to see
what it would be interesting
to see what you could see going on behind their eyes while they're doing their TV show back together again.
Right.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
So it's a very show busy show, and it's you know, it's got all that glamour and glitz of a live variety special in 1968.
Well, you had Bob Mackie on the show.
Bob Mackie, again, because of pigs, because he saw When Pigs Fly and he loved it. And he, you know, reached out to me and said, I would love to work with you on something.
Wow.
And I was like, I've got a project for you.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And talk about who better to get than
perfection.
Right. A costume designer who created, you know, I loved the Carol Burnett Show. I mean,
me too. I cut my teeth on it. I loved it.
And when you think about the variety of numbers, she did those straight, who was the dance troupe that was on her show? It wasn't Peter Gennaro. Anyway, I'll think of it. It was a choreographer who, she had a
Ernie Flatt?
Yeah, it might have been Ernie Flatt. Yeah, who had dancers that did your typical sort of Vegas-y showbiz numbers, but then she also had all those comedy routines too. Some of them musical, some of them not.
Right, and sketches and you know, and then she'd get some great musical guest on, you know, like Cher or Mel Torme or
right.
You know, or Ella Fitzgerald or whoever, and they would like sing these amazing medleys.
And he would provide all of those clothes.
Yeah, every week she'd be in some new crazy glamorous gown, because so she could be glamorous and she could be ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that was the thing about Bob too, that he really shared with Howard, and I think that's why he responded, because both of those men were humorists through the medium of costuming. I mean, unlike almost anybody else.
Right, to understand, and I remember seeing Pigs Fly and the clothes, which were funny and humorous and told a story on their own. Same thing with Bob Mackie and Carol Burnett. We all remember when she walks down in the, you know, Scarlett O'Hara green dress with the curtain rod. I'll never forget it when he says, it was, what was his name? Harvey Korman. and Miss Stoddard, you look, astonishing. And she says, well, I saw it in the window and I just couldn't resist. And hysterical, like who gets that? But
it is one of the greatest moments ever.
Hilarious and beautiful and funny at the same time.
Yeah.
So, and you had a pretty great cast on which to build this show originally.
We did. The funny thing is, when we started out, Jim Heinman was looking to write a vehicle for himself and for our friend Anne Brown. And so that's how we started working on the piece, and it just sort of kept snowballing, and then we got Patrick Brady involved as our arranger.
Yeah.
He is a genius.
Yeah.
And the stuff just became, it reached a certain point where he was like, oh no, I can't do this. This is now it's too big for me. It's too hard for me. I can't really pull this off. So we ended up getting George Dvorsky and Sally Mays, who are both just peerless singers and so funny and so nice, such good friends. I'm still very close to both of them.
And the music, it demands, like you said, just ripping off the Stephen Eady idea, it demands really great singers.
Great musicianship and great range.
Because that's what you remember from those duos, those duets, those married couples or whoever, that really it was about the music, but they have to be consummate comedians too.
They do. And consummate actors in Pete and Keely, because the great thing about Pete and Keely is it is so funny, it's so spoofy, it's so ridiculous. And yet, when you get to the end of the story, you will be crying.
Yeah.
It sneaks up on you. It hits you where you don't expect to be hit.
Like a ton of bricks, right?
And that's why I love the show so much.
Yeah. I'm so excited to bring it to our audience. And especially, it's a weird time now. We hope to be going back live, but if not, delivering things digitally. But the beauty of this show, which was, where did it originally play in New York? What theater was it at?
At the John Houseman.
Right, which is a little theater.
It was a small theater, but on the big side for a small theater.
Right. Yeah. But the beauty of it is it's a television show.
Right.
So the original idea was staging a theatrical version of a TV show.
Correct.
And so the marriage of that idea and the brilliant material you've put together and the moment in time where we are sort of between live theater and digital delivery, I think is going to add such dimension to the show that's not really been seen before, right?
Yes, I am so excited to do it in this medium.
Yeah.
Because it's a TV show.
Right.
With two people.
Right.
So it's, I think we can really get the feel in a way that we didn't in the theater.
Right. And also Paper Mill's a large venue with a big stage. Obviously, we've done shows pretty much as big as they come. And when you think back, a lot of those television specials, certainly in that era, were done on sound stages, right? They were big, but you could, with the camera, zoom into a face, just a pin spot,
exactly,
and then pull out, and there'd be dancers behind them. There won't be in this, but you'll get that large sense of being on that sound stage. And you could do that theatrically at the Houseman or in another place.
Yeah, we did it through lights, and of course it's theater, so you employ people's imaginations. There was an announcement at intermission, I think, saying you can see the cameramen are doing their best to stay out of everyone's way. There were no cameramen, but
here we can steal some tricks from actual TV.
I've been thinking about that because I know that stage very well. And I was, if you were really trying to do Pete and Keely at Paper Mill in front of a live audience, you would just build everything way down to the front, and just bring everything in and squeeze it down and make it, put it out there for the audience. But we don't have to do that.
No.
We can take advantage of all the areas of the stage, and we can show the stage sort of big and grand and thrilling, or as you say, we can bring it down to just a pin spot. There's all kinds of things we can do. I'm very excited about it.
I am too. I think we have a great lineup of shows this year and a lot of variety. But this one specifically, I think because of the concept that you have built it around, opens it up in a way it's not been seen before and can really deliver. I mean, as a theater director, you rely on a lot to bring an audience close to a moment that's a tender moment that might be quiet. And certainly, emotional, moving moments like happen at the end of the show. And we can actually take that to the nth degree because you'll have a camera that will really be able to deliver that too.
Yeah.
So it's exciting. We're really excited.
I'm thrilled. I can't wait.
I think it also offers, not that we have any casting ideas at this moment, but some real opportunities for some performers to visit this material who might not have taken that chance at another time.
Right.
So yeah, I think the casting possibilities are very exciting.
Yeah, this situation just it's so unique. It creates a lot of unusual opportunities.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, Paper Mill would not do Pete and Keely normally because it's such a little show, but I think we can do it brilliantly there in this situation.
I actually think in this sort of hybrid moment in time, we're going to do really spectacular things with it.
We're all learning. We're all learning how to navigate our way through this insane situation we're all in,
It's so funny that, yes, you're exactly right. And I have many friends who, when we graduated college just a few years ago, few decades ago, half of us went to New York and were performers and eventually became, I'm a director, producer, and then half of them went to LA and in the TV world. And now those worlds are coming together in a way that it's never happened before.
Yeah.
And it's exciting. It's also a little, scary because, I never thought I'd be a TV producer or director, but it's kind of what we're doing now.
Right.
Almost theater in a new milieu.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I'm so excited to have you back here at Paper Mill working on this project and bringing all your talents to revisit Pete and Keely and to give us to see it through a whole new lens. Little pun there.
Lens, yeah.
But actually, I think it's true. I can't wait. I'm so excited about it.
I can't wait too. Let's get going.
I know. I'm ready to go. Anyway,
yeah.
Thank you for being here with us today. And we will be back with Pete and Keely before you know it.
Great.
All right.
It was a pleasure.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us and for supporting Paper Mill Playhouse. Please tune in again next week for a very special episode with Tony Award-winning Broadway star and Paper Mill alum, Laura Benanti. See you then.